my exclusive interview with the president of Brazil and his response to President Trump threatening his country with 50% tariffs. This week, Washington launched an investigation into, quote, unfair trading practices. But the U.S. actually operates a trade surplus with Brazil, a massive one, in fact. Trump's case appears to be political score settling because he's focusing on what he calls a witch hunt against his friend, the former Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, the so-called Trump of the tropics, who now faces charges for his alleged role in an attempted coup against the current president, trying to overturn his 2022 election victory. But President Lula is no shrinking violet. He's a longtime heavyweight of global politics, and he told me he would not take this lying down. Mr. President, welcome back to our program. I want to ask you first, what does it feel like to be slapped with a 50% tariff by the United States, the world's biggest economy?
Well, Christian, for me, it was a surprise, not only the value of that tariff, but also how it was announced, the way it was announced. I think we're lacking a little bit of multilateralism on President Trump's mindset, and he knows that a problem of this sort, it is solved in a bargaining table, around the bargaining table. So what do we see? We were negotiating with the U.S. already for some months. My foreign affairs minister, the vice president of the Republic, which is also the Minister for Industry and Development and Commerce, were negotiating. And since March, we sent a proposal to the U.S. government. After 10 meetings, we sent a proposal on May the 7th, 16th, saying what we wanted and what was a possible first to reach an agreement. For our surprise, instead of a response to the letter that we sent, we received the news published in the President Trump's site. It was not a letter sent officially by diplomatic means. I think it was a mistake, a big mistake, because the letter that President Trump is full of things that are not true. First of all, the justice system in Brazil is independent. The president of the republic cannot interfere in the judicial branch of power. Second is that the trade deficit that is not true. The United States in the last 15 has a surplus of $410 billion vis-a-vis Brazil. And thirdly, if we're going to charge big tax in Brazil, that's a problem of the Brazilian government. If we charge a high tax and they don't agree, we can establish a negotiation with the government. This is how the world works with multilateralism. That's how the world trade works and how Brazil acts. What we cannot have is a President Trump forgetting that he was elected to govern the U.S. He was elected not to be the emperor of the world. It would be much better to establish a negotiation first and then to reach the possible agreement, because we're two countries that we had very good meetings and we have good relations for 200 years. And so he's breaking away from any protocol, any liturgy that should exist between the relations between two heads of state. It was very unpleasant. We're trying to talk with the people there, but we're also preparing ourselves to give an answer to that. What I've been saying publicly is that we will use all the words that exist in the dictionary in trying to negotiate. If we don't manage to reach an agreement, I can reassure you that we will go to the World Trade Organization, or we can gather a group of countries to respond, or we can use the reciprocity law that was passed, this bill by the National Congress. This is how it's going to work. I regret that two countries that have an historical relationship of 201 years prefer to be fighting through judicial means, because one president is not respecting the sovereignty of the other president.
Now, Mr. President, apparently President Trump is saying that he disagrees with Brazil's investigation and court case against your predecessor, President Bolsonaro. This is what President Trump said. This is nothing more or less than an attack on a political opponent, something I know much about. It happened to me 10 times. What's your response to that?
Well, my answer to that is that the judiciary branch of power in Brazil is independent. The president of the republic has no influence whatsoever with the Supreme Court and the justices. The justices are approved by the Senate. They took office and they have independence and they take care of our constitution. Bolsonaro is on trial, not because he's an opponent, a political opposition. I won 3 elections in this country. It's important to remember that here, every election that I won, I lost 3 previous elections and won another. So we participated in 5 elections, and never before in this country someone would raise this issue to try to say or try to coup d'etat attempt like Bolsonaro did. No, he's not judged personally. He is being judged by the acts. He tried to organize a coup d'etat. He threatened secretly the death. He planned the death of Vice President, myself, and the Chief Justice. He could be on trial just for that. And the Attorney General denounced yesterday he will be convicted, and I believe in that. Christian, I'd like to say something to the American people. If Trump was Brazilian, and if he did what was happening at the Capitol Hill, he'd also be on trial in Brazil, and possibly and he would have violated the Constitution. According to the justices, he could also be arrested if he had done that here in Brazil.
So I want to ask you finally, what are you going to tell your people about the current crisis? It's been described as the worst crisis between the United States and Brazil in more than a decade. What are you going to say to your people?
Olha, eu ainda não vejo crise, Cristiano.
I don't see a crisis yet. Sincerely, I think that in negotiation, that's how it works. Each one says what they want, and each one listens what they have to listen. But what is important is that the relationship between the 2 countries cannot go on like this. I don't consider myself an emperor to make a decision and publish on the newspaper. That's not how it works. That's impossible. And now President Trump to write a letter and putting as a condition, a precondition for negotiation, no. And that's very discretionary. I can't even believe in that. When I read the letter, I thought it was fake news when I saw the letter through the media. And then I thought it was a true letter that was signed by President Trump. So I can reassure you that Brazil, in the right moment, will give the right answer to the President Trump's letter. And in my address to the Brazilian people, I'm going to tell the Brazilian people what I'm thinking about all this. And sincerely, I can reassure you that Brazil does not enjoy troublemakers and trouble. Brazil likes to negotiate in peace. And that's how I act, and I think that's how all presidents should act. And this is, I think about President Trump too. That Brazil is an historic ally of the U.S. Brazil praises the economic relations that Brazil has with the U.S., but Brazil will not accept anything imposed on it. On the country. We accept negotiation and not imposition.
President Luiz Inácio da Silva of Brazil, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Obrigado a você, Cristiano.
Well, thank you, Christian. And I hope, sincerely, I hope, Christian, that President Trump make a review and revise his opinion.